What's happening, family? It is your man, CRB Jr. We are here again at Motown Mafia Podcast, a Big Boss Filmworks production. To my left is my guy, my friend, and my business partner, Brother Lou. What's happening, baby?
What it do, man?
It is what it is. Everybody good in your world?
Everybody's good, man. It's things are starting to really coast.
They coast. We just got a bunch of hot stuff. Our man, shout out to Al Prophet and American Dope. Al was just in town.
Oh, yeah.
Check out some of his stuff on American Dope. We got some stuff also that we're gonna be doing the posting that we did with Al.
Yeah, we got some of his stuff as well.
So we're loaded. Yeah, we got a lot of stuff coming. You people who do not know, we also have a sister channel or a baby channel. The Diaspora Plug, which we sometimes do some more of our intellectual or business related, still got that big boss flavor to it stuff. So check out the Diaspora Plug TV, a Big Boss affiliated station. Yeah. So, man, let's get to it.
Yeah, man. And we're talking about, right now, we're about to talk about Doo-Wop.
We're going to talk about Doo-Wop. We're going to talk about the legend of Mr. B.
Okay.
We're going to talk about, they just came out with a new list. You know, it's the year-end, a list of all the black billionaires or those close to being billionaires.
That's what I'm talking about.
There was one that's in the honorable mention category that's really worth, I'll just give you a hint. You can do well for yourself after you stop being president. Unbelievable.
Really?
We'll get to that. Yeah, blew my mind at the end of we're going to do the whole breakdown. But then
they had stay close to that.
They had a list, and it was two people. Coming to America.
Okay.
Went to the bank, and there's a reason why Michelle and them ain't got no time to be worried about. They doing better now. They got a lot of coochie sweaters now. Yeah, they do it. They paid off their student loans. Yeah, they gave in the office still owing student loans. Not no more.
Oh, man.
And then we're going to talk about the interesting thing that I actually did see. You know, I'm not going to hate, even though we come for you, Vlad. We come for you. But saw a great interview on Vlad, of one of the founders of FUBU, and he was talking about his spending habits when they hit that lick, and it just reminded us of the brothers from our orbit sometimes, how we behave once we get that bag, right?
Yeah,
right.
man.
But we're gonna start off with we here in Detroit, home of that infamous and now famous street organization known as YBI, a acronym for Young Boys Incorporated.
Right.
Shout out to all those guys. R.I.P. to Brett. Shout out to Mr. Cooper, aka Pep. Shout out to Big Five, Brother Steve. Still looking for you brothers to come in. Shout out to brother who got another show here in the city. Shout out to Chestnut.
Okay.
Shout out to all those guys, man, all those YBI guys. There was always a lot of street politics involved in that situation, but I've been I try to be the voice of reason. Those guys' place in Detroit street lore cannot be denied.
Yeah, without question.
And those would be the guys in that circle that we were friends with and had good times with, and those that my brother Eddie did business with, and then through him I got to be their acquaintance, and then even the guys on the other side of the street, because we all middle-aged men now. A lot of time has passed, so shout out to all those guys. But with that said about YBI, in doing our research of this and trying to give these street legends their flowers, or put some things in some historical context, and needless to say, with the success of the BMF show, and there's about to be a BMF documentary. You got 3 different projects that we spoke about that are about to come out on Kenneth Supreme McGriff and the Supreme team. As this street thing and hustler stories become so mainstream, obviously some of the people in the other cultures and communities, they got bigger microphones than us, and then they start telling the story their way.
Right.
And a lot of the characters who should be mentioned don't get mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen movies in the past 5 years. Well, a little bit longer than 5 years. In the past 10 years, within us doing our thing here, they had a lot of inaccuracies.
A lot of inaccuracies. I mean, and again, you know, we did a post a while ago and kind of roasted the White Boy Rick movie. But shout out to White Boy Rick, to Rick Wershing.
Yeah, man.
You know, we actually carry, or used to carry, he's transitioning companies. He's in the cannabis business now. We actually carry his product at I think
What's it called, the 8th?
It's called the 8th. Yep, the 8th by the 8th, about the 8th Amendment. And did good, did very well. He's doing well and doing a lot of positive things. But yeah, they completely just destroyed the movie about his life, and it was, I mean, a story. I mean, you had shout out to the Curry Boys, Big Man, Little Man, and all them. I mean, it was a story, just a classic story. But you know, they tell the White Boy Rick story. They don't mention Maserati Rick. They don't mention Best Friends. They don't mention Demetrius Holloway.
And the problem with these movies, especially about our thing here, is this stuff doesn't, these stories don't happen in a vacuum. You know, I mean, there's no inclusion, none. It's just, okay, this is the White Boy Rick story, and then they throw a few names out and, you know, give it a little, you know, sprinkle a little bit of.
I mean, and I love what they're doing with stars, and definitely shout out to Meech. He'll be, you know, may he get home soon. Shout out to T, who is home.
Yeah.
Shout out to the whole BMF family. But you know, they throw Eminem in playing White Boy Rick in like episode 3.
Right. They did something. I think they digitally de-aged him or something like that, and had him in for a hot second.
And I get it. They're doing BMF. It's Detroit. It's a hustle. It's a street TV series. You gotta throw in, but to throw White Boy Rick into that episode with no context,
right?
It's just
it was a disservice.
It was a disservice. I get it. Again, I ain't mad at them at all.
I mean, it's fan service is what they call it.
There you go. There you go. But and shout out to Dame Dash and those guys. I believe they're working on the Paid in Full too, because what Dame did when he did Paid in Full was he brought, which was an urban legend in our community, to the big screen, and let the legend and the tragedy of that whole Alpo, AZ, Rich Porter thing, you know, at least allow our community to have a point of reference to talk about this kind of thing. And if you guys have not read, it's at my house. Great book also on that era. It's called The Crack Era, from the big homie Kevin Childs.
Kevin Childs' book.
Yeah, if you guys have not read that and you're into this kind of thing, do yourself a favor and get The Crack Era by the homie Kevin Childs. With that said, though, he mentions these guys in his book, but I went and I viewed some, more documentaries and things on them, and I'll be honest, I was not that familiar. I had heard in casual, my time in New York, you would hear the names, but I really didn't. And the name is a brother named, and both of these guys are actually R.I.P., I believe, Doo-Wop in L.A.
Okay.
They were closely associated and childhood friends with Rich Porter from the Paid in Full story, right?
Okay.
But I have not heard any contradictory stories that Doo-Wop and L.A. were basically the New York version of Young Boys Incorporated.
Okay.
15, 16-year-olds literally making millions of dollars. And the impact, and you were of age seeing the YBI phenomenon here in Detroit, right?
I was living around the corner from it. My grandparents stayed not too far. Right, exactly. We heard things, but as a kid, they tried to keep me sheltered from it. But I mean,
okay, but you saw it change Detroit's culture.
Oh God, yes. I'll never forget going to high school to Ground Effects. It looked like UFOs. I mean, it was the bumping sounds, the clothes. I mean.
So let me unpack when I say it changed the culture. You had, and again, it seemed to be the same kind of situation of the impact that Doo-Wop and his man L.A. had in Harlem is what guys like Brett and Pep, and Bunyan and all those guys who were just in their teens, handling hundreds of thousands of dollars, buying custom. They were talking about like Doo-Wop was the first guy in Harlem to buy an Audi, and then his man L.A. went and bought a Saab.
Wow.
Same thing, these guys here, they were buying, what was the big Corvette? The Crossfire.
Okay.
And why the young boys was buying them Crossfire Vets. They made Laredo Jeeps, what Laredo Jeeps are.
Mm-hmm.
They, and for better or for worse, I'm old enough because right before that era, if you were a high school kid, and you had a job at the mall, and you had a car.
No, you was that guy.
You were that guy.
No, you had it. You was getting anything you wanted.
I mean, you were the young lady's alpha male.
Mm-hmm.
If you had a job, I'm talking about at the restaurant at the mall or at the movie theater, and you had a car of your own, and you were 16, 17 years old.
It was a wrap.
And you getting a paycheck every 14 days, you were the envy of all your friends.
Yes, indeed.
And then the YBI phenomenon occurred.
No, that whole landscape changed.
And then you saw, for lack of a better word, your peer competition. You weren't competing to see who was doing better at working at the movie theater or working at the Foot Locker. It was, these guys were buying, they were doing better than everybody's parents.
Mm-hmm.
It made it difficult to listen to the teacher and the principal and what he's saying, although what the teacher and the principal were saying was correct.
Mm-hmm.
But your man is 16, he just does not have drive, and the same thing with they're saying this Doo-Wop and LA in Harlem, they were buying these cars before they had driver's license. I know that Dexter YBI crew, they were buying whips long before they had driver's license.
Yeah, big time.
They're wearing $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 worth of jewelry. And again, for better or for worse, the whole Detroit saw this. And just like Detroit, like Harlem with those guys, it wasn't that like Doo-Wop and LA and Harlem, they came in the aftermath of the Nicky Barnes organization going away. Frank Matthews had fled years before that.
Mm-hmm.
The Freddie Myers organization went down in '83. YBI followed Doc Davis and Frank Media Usher, and of course Eddie Jackson and Pops, Black Butch, Rudolph, and that crew.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to 5-0. Just talked to 5-0 nephew. Shout out to Yasmin. But Eddie and all those guys from the 70s, I was just thinking about this. Like Eddie and his whole crew, they were all family. They all had, when they started hustling, they all had jobs and children. So
yes, they did. They, 26, 28?
Pops was in his late 20s. Eddie was in his mid-20s. 5-0, Dolph, all those guys were mid to late 20s. But they all had worked at the plant.
Mm-hmm. All right, bus driver, cab driver.
It's different when you get into the streets and you have a family, a woman or wife and kids,
mm-hmm.
and you get into the game and you're a sophomore in high school.
Yeah, that changes the dynamic exponentially.
And it made young people not want to wait for success.
That's right.
It made waiting, saving, that shit went out the window.
Mm-hmm.
I can get with my man, they got that China White, and it can happen. I can go from walking to riding Benzes in a month. you know, in the murder and mayhem, you know, and so they're talking about in the Doo-Wop documentary, and the same thing with the YBI thing here. And what nobody had was any financial literacy, right?
Absolutely not.
Now, of course, we now, like me as a middle-aged businessman, talking about 16-year-olds don't talk about financial literacy. And we often, when people cover this crime stuff or this street stuff, they don't put the age of the people in context. It is so crazy to be 18, 17, handling millions of dollars. Coming from a poverty environment where no one's ever had any real money.
That's right.
So they don't know, nobody's telling them, hey, you should be, I mean, even though Doo-Wop, this guy Doo-Wop later in his career, he would end up, after a robbery attempt in New York or the killing of his uncle Butter, he ended up taking a 2-year break, went down to Virginia, set up his thing. When he came back, he bought a clothing store.
Okay.
And he set up a record label, right actually before his demise.
Okay.
But nobody is saying, hey, young man, do you understand? You're 17, 18 years old. You're sitting on $3-4 million. This is in the 80s, so $3-4 million in the 80s, easily 10-12 million now.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to do this anymore. You won. You already have won the game of life at 18.
That's right.
Go to Jamaica, go to the Bahamas, move to Hawaii, but with no financial literacy or no one around, same situation, of course, with YBI.
Right.
I know all those guys are still like all that money, and I can relate to all the money that has touched my hands. And we did better with the money than most. You know, 40-year family business and all.
Mm-hmm.
But he's a phenomenal character, and I really want that I had never really heard of another city that had I understood exactly, obviously being here, what YBI did to Detroit and how it changed the landscape and mindset of people, right? But yeah, for those of you guys who are into that, check out the Doo-Wop LA story. You'll find it quite interesting. And what I did not know, if you're familiar with the Jay-Z Damon Dash story, that Dame says when he first met Jay-Z, and people were like, well, why did you know you could deal with him? And Dame's like, because he was wearing Nike Air Force Ones, and only us guys in Harlem wore Uptowns. Guys in Brooklyn didn't wear Air Force Ones, so when Dame's like, when he saw Jay wearing Air Force Ones, he was like, okay, this guy got some style. What I did not know until watching the Doo-Wop documentary, that it was Doo-Wop in LA and that crew that made the Air Force Ones known as Uptowns.
Uptowns, okay.
That came from that crew, and they were home based in an area of Harlem known as Sugar Hill, which you guys know, there's a famous movie that we're going to review.
The AZ song.
Yeah, exactly. and just we wrap this up about culture and difference. I was telling you about. I was working down at Rockefeller Center. We still out there.
Yeah, he's still cool.
And there was this Dominican guy. Shout out to Miguel.
Mm-hmm.
And Miguel was a busboy at the restaurant there at Rockefeller Center.
Okay.
Miguel was driving a 500 Benz to work. He had the bag. He's plugged in with the Dominicans uptown 145th, 155th, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But in his culture, even though he's riding Benzes,
mm-hmm.
handling bricks, it was still expected that he would work.
Okay.
Or get a bodega or something. What he could not do was just... Yeah, so to wrap up, Brother Lou, on this, the legend of Doo-Wop in LA out of Harlem. Again, if you guys are not up on that, there's a lot of stuff on YouTube available about them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna have to go back through the archives and really do a little deeper dive into them.
Mm-hmm.
But there were a couple things, again, it reminded me, because one of the incidents that led to the demise of the brother in LA was his mom's house gets robbed by, of course, some comrades, because what Biggie say, that cheddar breed jealousy. And some guys he had started off hustling with ended up robbing his mom's house, which led to a beef, which eventually led to LA's demise.
Damn.
And it reminded me though when Eddie moved, when he told my father that he was gonna move to the suburbs and get out the city. And he was like, "Why, you got a nice house in the city?" And Eddie was like, "Man, I can't have all this money and niggas jumping out on the bushes. I gotta worry about niggas jumping out the bushes and shit like that." And so many, again, when it's new to you, you know, and that's what we have to really understand. The money be new. We don't even know. No one to say, "Hey man, you can't be making $1 million a week and your mama still in the hood."
Can't do it.
Tragedy gonna happen. And there's so many from New York to Detroit to Atlanta, tragedies that occur because we just don't be knowing. And it ain't just people in the street.
Black people in the street. I think about that tragedy with Jennifer Hudson.
Jennifer Hudson, God rest her soul. Shout out to Jennifer Hudson.
Oh, she's still alive.
Yeah, she's still alive,
but
her
their family.
Yeah,
her family, man. Wow.
And nobody, same situation, new money. And nobody say, "Hey, baby girl, you all on TV, people singing this, that, and the third, you all in these movies. Your mama's still here on the block."
That's right.
Somebody gonna think something sideways. You know, but the big man, R.I.P. Eddie Jackson, you know, Eddie was like, "Nah, we moving out here to the suburbs with the private security. Only niggas gonna be around here gonna be Smokey Robinson and some NBA ball players, Motown elite.
Right.
And I ain't gotta worry about when I come out, when I pull up at night in my Rolls Royce, as he said, niggas jumping off the roof, niggas coming from behind the bushes burning. I ain't living like that."
And nowadays, Southfield ain't the place to be like that.
No, not now. You gotta go West Bloomfield or Bloomfield Hills.
That's right.
Or Grosse Pointe. But the point is, you gotta get out the hood.
Got to.
And as we see in the hip hop community now, all the stuff that still continues to happen because you have young black millionaires who still keep themselves so close to the front line.
That's right.
There was a little side note on him though. Doo-Wop was charging the Dominicans $10,000, I want to say a day, to hustle on his block. He was an insightful young man.
Oh, he was enterprising.
He was an enterprising young man. Yeah. And to show you the kind of connect according to the content that's out there, you know, his plug was so good. He told the Dominicans who were getting supplied directly from the Colombians, he needed help. And in fact, if you guys want a piece of the action on my block, I need that 10 large a day, and you kids can get a piece of the action. But without that, we ain't having it.
We can't do this.
We can't do that. While we understood that in the quote-unquote legitimate economy.
Wow, yeah, man.
That you just can't come to my neighborhood, open up a store, and sell all the Hennessy and Remy and Newports on my block, and then you don't give a nothing to the block?
No panache?
Nothing. But hard something and bubble gum, and guess what? I'm fresh out of bubble gum. You know what I mean? So again, yeah, man. Fascinating story. Those guys Doo-Wop in LA. They were truly the YBI of New York. Interesting part of our history. Really affected, because if they affected the culture of Harlem, that means they affected the culture of hip hop.
Without question.
Which means they affected the culture of the world.
Definitely.
Because hip hop culture is the dominant culture and driving force.
It beat out rock.
You know what I mean? So, yeah, man. Doo-Wop LA. You guys, if you're into that stuff, check them out.
Big time.
And kind of segueing back to the glory days of cocaine.
Before such an entree-vous, did you want to give a little love to our sponsor?
Yeah, Bono. Bono's Apparel. Bono is over there on Davidson. I gotta get the address. I should be ready, locked and loaded with this. But right there on Davidson between Linwood And Dexter is Vano's Apparel. Go in there. They've got the hottest men and women apparel available. That is at 3246 West Davidson, Suite A. Right next to it is also under the Vano umbrella.
Blazing Hookahs.
Blazing Hookahs. Got to holler at them. Holler at, you can ask for Vano if you're over there. You can ask for Kayla. You can ask for Bow Wow, any of the other family over there. Again, just the hottest apparel in the city. I think even this hoodie and jogging set I got came from there. So
no question. It's top notch up there.
Top notch. I always tease Vano that he is the Rodeo Drive of the hood.
Without question.
So shout out to the homie Vano, and definitely for real, brothers and sisters, you guys gotta get some gear. You're doing what you're doing. Seasons are changing. Gotta get your coat game right. Gotta get your boot game right.
Yep.
Definitely, it will be worth your time to go check out Vano's Apparel, and that's at 3246 West Davidson, Suite A. If you guys like hookah, need some hookah apparel or hookah infrastructure, if you want to throw a hookah party, just want to book a small place for a venue, Blazing Hookahs is a great location. So again, 3246 West Davidson, Vano's and Blazing Hookahs. Give them a shout. Mention Lou's name, mention my name, mention Big Boss Filmworks, Motown Mafia podcast. They always show love, but they will show even some additional love. And proud for them to be a sponsor of the Motown Mafia podcast.
Big time. And if you're interested, hit us up in sponsorship.
Yes, a lot of sponsorship opportunities, and we'll help you get out there, man. We'll help you get out there. We're redoing the studio here. They were telling me, in fact, in the front, Lou, that we should use, because we're right here on West 7 Mile, that front banner, that we can rotate it out. So maybe
that's a good move.
We have to get over there and get to Vano's and get some official sponsorship collateral going.
There we go.
So you know that maybe about 3 weeks ago, Basil Miller, we've heard us speak about him, the huge mega whale hustler out of the Bahamas. Some of his family reached out to us.
Yes.
Gonna actually be catching up with them shortly. And they sent us, hopefully a lot more of it, but some archival newspaper footage from covering Mr. B. You guys have heard early on, we referred to him as Mr. Q. Was trying to kind of keep the anonymity. But as this thing grew bigger and bigger,
cat's out the bag,
cat's out the bag that Mr. Q was Mr. B, and that Mr. B is Basil Miller, R.I.P.
Rest in peace, yeah, big time.
And he sent us a newspaper clipping. So just for, again, the backstory, though, for you guys who don't know, once my pops got out of the Fed joint from that original one, that's Brother Tatum, we just shot some good stuff with Brother Ray. Hey Ray, we still taping, brother. I'll hit you back. Shout out to Ray Tatum getting off Zero Atlanta. Got some great content we just did with him. But so come 84, Pops has come home from the Fed joint. He's done his time from the original indictment with Eddie and 32-man indictment, during the grand hustle of the 70s.
Right.
While he's in the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary, he meets a gentleman by the name of Basil Miller. Basil Miller is from the Bahamas, and what I did not know until this article, he had actually been sentenced to 45 years. He would not do 45 years. He was exceptionally well connected.
A lot of interest to keep that from happening.
Yeah, there was a lot of interest to keep that from happening. Basil was obviously a big shot, in the Fed joints, like almost college. Everybody knows everybody's resume and where they went to, what they've accomplished and things of that. And Basil knew the members of the Gambino family that Pops knew from working for Eddie. So Pops and Basil form a relationship. They keep in touch. So this is like circa 82-ish, 81, 82-ish. Pops gets down to Atlanta in 77, so I guess he meets Basil in 77. because Basil gets arrested August 17th, 1974.
Right.
So basically 3 years later, he's already at Atlanta when Pop gets to Atlanta Federal Penitentiary. They see that he sees he's a big whale. They always laugh. The only blacks that could sit at the table with the Italians was Mr. B and Pops.
And your dad.
Yeah, they'd be like, yeah, you be special niggas. Y'all, why them Italians talk to y'all, let y'all eat with them, and Pops would be like, they talk crazy about Basil, but never to his face.
Oh, no.
He'd be like, they call him funny style and everything else, but never to his face. So, Mr. B, Basil, and Pops form a relationship, get really, really cool during their time in Atlanta, exchange information. Fast forward, Pops gets out in '84. He's still doing some things with the Westies and that crew. When that situation ends, I guess Basil must have come home in '85-ish, or right in there. He gets the phone call from his man saying, I'm back home, I'm back in the island, I got my thing back reestablished, why don't you come down here and holler at me?
Right.
And I'll never forget, so Pops is telling me about his man he did time with, that's in the Bahamas, and he's gonna, and now Pops, in his day way, hell of a guy. He is still on parole.
Okay.
So needless to say, he's not supposed to be leaving the country to go speak to, he's not supposed to speak to any other felons, but of course, everybody he knows is a felon. So, he's like, I'm going to go down here, Junior, I'm going to go down to the Bahamas and just see what my man talking about. So that's like on a Friday, Lou.
Okay.
He's staying in Mr. Moore's suite there on 6 Mile in the building.
Okay.
So he leaves like on a Friday. I'll never forget, I come back home. I come back to see, I think because he told me he was coming back on Monday. Monday I come by the joint, and he must have got there 3 minutes before me, because he still got his luggage on his arm, and he's taking off his carry-on bag, and he undoes his jacket, and he's just talking to me casually. He's like, drops his bag, takes off his jacket, then he takes off his sweater.
He had a bird on it.
And there's a brick taped to his stomach and another key taped to his back.
You see?
And I'm like, Daddy, what are you doing? He was like, well, I was already down there under, fake ID.
Right.
Anyway, and I didn't catch no heat going down there, and if I'd have caught some heat, they'd swipe me on my way down, likely.
Ooh, but times are different.
Oh, no, you can't do you. Do not get on planes now. Do not go through airport security doing such things in 2022. But yes, different world, no facial recognition or any of that stuff back then. And so I'm like, so what happened? He was like, so I was down there. My man was like, we back on. You down here. We can wait for you to send some people back down here to get it popping. Or you can go ahead and, Pop at that time was still a young man. He's in his early 40s. He was like,
oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, he was in the middle of it.
He was getting it in.
He was like, Lord, no, we ain't got to wait. We can get it popping now. I'll take 2 back with me now.
Wow.
And him and Mr. B, that started their run. He eventually would start sending, God rest his soul, Cousin Tony, other family members whose names I won't say. Shout out, cuz. Hope she's doing well. No, she's doing well, in fact. And then eventually, of course, that led to me going down to the islands, because we used to, back in them days, we would just fly. We would either meet his people in Miami.
Okay.
Yeah, you got a question?
Yeah, I do got a question. It was, at what point did Basil get kidnapped?
Okay, so that's going back to this newspaper article, which we will post this article. Our website is being redone.
Yeah,
we're going to have this newspaper article along with all those other ones. Go ahead.
Yeah, I might do a hell of a fellas for that one. It's formerly known as The Real Ones. The docu-series on Basil Miller. Well, not on Basil Miller, but just different hustlers from the past.
Right. So according to this newspaper article from the newspapers down there, the authorities spent $1,100,000 in a 3-country chase because it seems Basil, before he got sentenced, was out on a $500,000 bond that he skipped out on. Now again, family, this is $500,000 in 1974.
Yeah.
That is, by all math, the same as walking away for $5 million.
$5 million now.
The government had spent $100,000 trying to track him down.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, they spent in today's money $1 million trying to find him. They track him down in the U.S. Virgin Islands, and the legend goes that the agents put a Mickey in his drink, and next thing when he wakes up, he's in Dade County in Miami federal court.
As they often will do.
Yeah. In fact, to go into that part of the story, when the DEA pulled me off the plane, and I'm talking to Basil's lawyer down in Miami, and
right.
He's debriefing me about what just happened,
mm-hmm.
and he said, "Oh, you only had $80,000. Usually, when Mr. Miller's friends call me, I have to bail them out from Dade County. But $80,000, they said, Miami International. This is again truly in the heart of the Miami Vice era." But yeah, that's what that kidnapping was about. They
got you.
So I now with that article, they would connect the dots. So he's on the run.
Mm-hmm.
He's bouncing all around the Caribbean, attempting to avoid the authorities.
Right.
The authorities have thrown $100,000 of money at catching him back then.
Okay.
They catch up to him in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Hit him with a Mickey.
Uh-huh.
And when he wakes up, he's in Miami.
And it was his daughter. Was it his daughter or his niece that helped you out during your situation?
So when that incident occurs with me, so Pop started sending me down there to deliver Mr. B his money. And it was really my internship and really, really working for my father.
Right.
When that thing goes south and the DEA mistake me for dad and they pulled me off the plane,
mm-hmm.
Take my $9,000, I had $90,000 with me, they take 10. They keep me in detention at Miami International for 4 hours. So needless to say, first thing they know I didn't get off the plane in the Bahamas. So
right.
It's Mr. B who calls my old man and says, "I think we got some problems. Your son never made the flight.
Okay.
Have you heard from him?" Pops is like, "No, I didn't hear from him." So they were able to put 2 and 2 together. They're like, "He's been detained."
Right.
So when I call Pops from Miami International, as soon as the DEA finally lets me go, first thing he says is they just let you go? Or they still holding you? And I was like, "No, they let me go." And he was like, "All right, go back to your normal hotel."
Mm-hmm.
And how much we got?
Yeah, you got about 10 minutes.
Go back to your normal hotel, and our people will get in touch with you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. B's daughter.
Okay, so that was it. Okay,
yeah. His daughter immediately flew up from the Bahamas and came and got the bag from me. And actually, that's the last time I ever saw him. I spoke to him.
Wow. Okay.
Of course, they would change my life because then Mr. B would say, "Just start taking the money to New York. I got some bankers who can circle it around through some legitimate methods and get me back my money." Of course, that leads to me moving to New York, and the rest, as they say, becomes history. But yeah, we'll post that article. Very much. Frank Matthews ran away on a $500,000 bond in '72. Mr. B is running off on a $500,000 bond. The levels, these guys were truly the pioneers of this stuff. And when you guys see the movie Blow, and you hear about, in fact, he ended up introducing one of Pop's lieutenants, John the Baptist, to Carlos Leader. Carlos Leader was, of course, a chief lieutenant of Pablo Escobar, but it is not an overstatement to say that this guy, Basil Miller, was one of the architects of that whole thing at Norman's Cay, that pipeline from the Escobar Medellin cartel through the Bahamas into Miami.
Because I remember you telling me you went up to the island where he was at, and it was very much like that scene. Like, was it you who told me it was like keys in the water, just...
So, yeah, this has been my second or third trip down there, and I'm chilling with his son, you know, and this guy was so famous and respected, you know, down in the islands. When you
Black Sosa.
When you go through like the mall or whatever, people would just be like, Basso.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously, black man handling that kind of bread.
Yeah, big time.
He was in a league with not a lot of other people. But so his son introduces me to his man, you know, again, back to like we were talking about, brothers down there was getting it, you know, he was our age, I was like 20, 21 back then when this is going down.
Mm-hmm.
He introduced him to his man's 21, driving 5 Series BMWs down in the Bahamas and shit. And he tells me the story about his mom, who, you know, is old school and would be washing clothes in the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
And like 3 big garbage bags floated up, and she opens them up, and she thinks, poor woman, she thinks it's dish detergent, and she starts using the stuff in the garbage bags to wash clothes from. And when her son sees what she's doing, he's like, what's the problem, Mom? Because he don't know exactly what's happening yet. And she says, oh, this detergent is too strong, it's burning holes in the clothes. And he tasted, he's like, oh, Mom, and like threw away 8 bricks, but it was still a whole nother garbage. I mean, they were running so much stuff from the Bahamas to South Florida, and the DEA and the Coast Guard would hop on, would catch the planes or the speed boats or cigarette boats, and people would just be dumping bags of Yale out of helicopters, out of airplanes, or out of speedboats. Today, in fact, Eddie Jr. was just telling me that in South Florida, used to be people went scavenging, trying to find old Spanish ships full of gold.
Right, they're trying to find...
Right now, the scavenge is people rent boats and get all kind of equipment in attempt to find that bag, all those thousands and tens of thousands of bricks that got thrown out of airplanes, speedboats, and helicopters.
But what is too? And you gotta forgive my ignorance, but after 40 years, would it even?
If it was wrapped the way they did it, it would still be, because they purposely, of course, they're wrapped in plastic and rubber.
Okay, so it's much like coffee.
I mean, they're airtight sealed.
Yeah, big time.
And the packages are waterproof. They float to the bottom of the ocean. It's as good today as it was in 1984.
There's some people out there right now going to buy some scuba gear.
They do. I'm telling you, it's a big deal down there in the Fort Lauderdale, Miami area. The scavenging, it's again, they're not trying to find the Armada boat from 1500.
Right.
They're trying to find the Escobar bag from 82. So we're gonna follow up. We'll keep you guys abreast. I'm really hopeful to get to the islands. We're gonna, check the temperature when we catch up with the people down there. But just a fascinating character of all the many people I met through working for my pops. This guy was definitely in a league by himself.
Without question.
Highly educated. Again, he didn't work with the Medellin cartel second, third person. He was directly, him and Carlos, he was one of the architects of this whole thing. You go to Miami and you see what the Yale business did for Miami. He played his small part in that happening.
Did his thing, big time.
Big things. Legend of Mr. B. So yeah, when you can get that up on. But that we got anyway. www.bigbossfilmworks.com. I don't want to say it too early. We got some new technical people we brought onto the team. Shout out to Olga.
Yeah, Miss Olga, big ups.
So we got some really talented people now working on our website, and so you guys will be able to go into the archives and see all those newspaper articles about Pops and Eddie. their associates' newspaper articles about Mr. B. Really take your time and digest them. Then when you guys got some questions, you can hit us up. Speaking of hitting us up, they need to be doing what?
You need to be hitting us up at our Facebook. You need to hit us up at our Instagram, all attached to the name Big Boss Filmworks. We are also on TikTok. And if you want to get in touch with us, you can leave us an email, bigbossfilmworks@yahoo.com or bigbossfilmworks@gmail.com. Any questions or inquiries?
Yes, and please make sure you guys are hitting that like, share, and subscribe button. We are approaching another milestone.
Don't forget the notification bell.
And don't forget that if you're in the whip driving, you want to check out this content, but you can't view it, you can go directly to Spotify or Anchor and just check out the Motown Mafia podcast. You can ride and hear us chopping up the game.
And very soon we will be up on Apple.
Coming soon, so it's going down.